Welcome to episode 5 of the Stitching Geek podcast. My name is Mallory, aka the Stitching Geek, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. If you're new or returning, I'm super glad to have you here, and let's get right on into the stitching segment. There hasn't been a ton of knitting since the last time I talked to you guys. I'm going to be honest, the first dose of the vaccine hit me pretty hard in the way that I was exhausted. And so I mostly just slept or watched like TV and YouTube. I didn't even have the energy to pick up my knitting. But there has been a little bit of knitting, and I'm going to share that with you today. Let's start with my first work in progress, which is the ongoing work in progress of the Harvest cardigan. This is a pattern by Tin Can Knits. I'm working on it out of Wool of the Andes worsted from Knit Picks, which is a 100% Peruvian wool, and it is in the Baltic Heather colorway. I still am loving the color of the yarn and how it's knitting up. I did add a progress keeper like I talked about last time, just so we can kind of see that progress has been made. Or in this case, that progress has not been made. I added the progress keeper, and I've knitted about a quarter of a row. I haven't gotten very far. It's not anything wrong with the pattern. It's just more of, I had to concentrate too much. So I went ahead and haven't picked it up as much as I should have. But what I have done is picked up a languishing whip, which is the Dudester scarf by Yana Pihota. Apologies if I'm butchering the name, my bad. It's never clear with some names if it's Yana or Jana. I'm going to assume Yana though. So this is a scarf I started back at the end of July in 2020 for my partner. And then it kind of got put to the wayside because at the time I was working on a couple different other scarves and I was tired of scarves. I was tired of gray projects. So I just kind of popped it into a bag and decided to work on it later. So I pulled this back out because I was a little frustrated with everything else that I was knitting. Last time I talked about the swirlwind hat that I was trying to cast on and I was running into trouble. All my own fault since I didn't do a gauge swatch and things like that. So I just kind of wanted something that was already in progress, something I could pick up and go and not have to cast on and do counting and do all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to go. So that's what I did. I looked through my works in progress and I was like, oh, this is like a good chunk of the way done. Let's grab this and start on it. And then in a serendipitous bit of luck, as I was pulling this scarf out of my work in progress pile, I was watching the Fiberbound podcast here on YouTube. I'll link it down below. And the host of that podcast announced her cowl or her knit along, what she is calling, and I have it written down here, what she is calling the Whip Down Cal 2021. I believe the idea there is to, similar to Stash Dash in a way, is a way to work on your whips and try to get some of those whips down. So it just seemed like perfect timing. Like literally as I was grabbing this, a cal was being announced. So I'm going to link to that episode. So if you guys want to join in, and I believe she's going to give some prizes, you can do so, but also check out her podcast. It's really fun. It's really great. I think she's in Australia. So it's really nice to kind of see new to me yarns and things I don't see all the time. So definitely check that out. But anyway, the scarf, to kind of keep up with like seeing progress, I added a progress keeper to this one. So it comes like right here-ish. See if I can get that to focus. So right there. So we can see I've knitted about an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches. I can measure it, but I'm not gonna. I did want to mention that both this progress marker and the progress marker on my Harvest cardigan come from the Lemonade shop. She does great notions and yarn. I made a hat out of some yarn of hers as well that is fabulous. These particular notions were part of the Get Your Vote On Stitch Marker like fundraiser when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. She did these really neat stitch markers that had like Ruth Bader Ginsburg's collar and a vote kind of thing. And then I think the other one says FU 2020, which, yeah, big same. And 50% of the proceeds went to the ACLU. They're no longer available. I went and tried to find them, so you can't purchase them anymore, but she does have other stitch markers and other, notions and great yarn and things like that. So I'll be sure to link the store down below. So I'm knitting this scarf out of Barocco Vintage in the Cracked Pepper colorway. This particular yarn I have quite a bit of. It's actually right here behind me. At one point I bought a sweaters quantity and then chickened out of actually making a sweater for myself. So I have a ton of it left over. Not even really left over since I never really made anything for myself out of it. So I made a sweater for my nephew out of it. That was the other sweater I've made before, but he was a baby, so it's used maybe a ball and a half. I'm also using it on a weaving project because I have a ton of it, and then the scarf as well. So I'm sure it will come back up again. It's a worsted yarn that is 52% acrylic, 40% wool, and then 8% nylon. And I do really enjoy this yarn. Barocco Vintage it's machine washable, which is great because of the acrylic content, I think. And then it's a good workhorse yarn. It doesn't feel too acrylic-y, if that makes sense. I always compare it to certain types of acrylic make me feel like it's squeaking on the needles. I don't know if you guys have experienced that or even know what I'm talking about, but it feels like it just kind of hurts my hands a little bit and it squeaks. Not as bad as cotton hurts my hands, but I just feel like certain acrylic yarns are squeaky, and this doesn't feel like that. I'm on, I think, the second ball of yarn for this one. I think I'm about halfway through. Anytime I knit a scarf, I usually get bored and stop way before I'm supposed to, so I'm hoping to not do that with this one. I did a quick search, and apparently scarves on average should be about 60 inches long, which is 5 feet. That's a lot of scarf. Hang on. So I have a little over 3 feet so far. So I'm over halfway. Woohoo! But it's still, 2 feet to go. And that feels like a lot when you're knitting just a gray scarf. So basically I'm going to be knitting this gray scarf until I'm gray. I already have some grays. With both my works in progress, I've been struggling a little bit with my row counters. I've switched over primarily to the Knit Companion app, which is awesome. Not sponsored, but just a great app, and it's a good way for me to easily take my row counters with me. But I often forget to actually count the rows. So I finish a row and then I just keep going instead of very easily hitting the button. Technology is great, but there's only so much you can do if you don't actually do the thing that you need to do, like input the data for the technology to keep track of. So there's part of this scarf I'm pretty sure I forgot a garter ridge for. I'm also pretty sure I'm the only one who would notice it. So I didn't bother tinking back. I couldn't deal with it. Didn't want to. And it's not a scarf for me. It's a scarf for my partner, and they'll never notice. So whatever. But I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I just have trouble with remembering to count my rows. And if it's not in, an easy way to tell what the rows are, I am lost. And then with the Harvest cardigan, the rows just seem off. Every time I'm knitting, it seems like I'm on the wrong row of what the Knit Companion says I should be on. But luckily, Tin Can Knits does keep track of their stitch counts pretty regularly. So once I'm done with the part that I'm on, I should be able to count my stitches and then figure out if I've missed any rows and increase as I need to get to where I need to be. So I'm not as concerned about that one, but it's still, frustrating at myself that I just forget to do it. So let's move on to On the Horizon. So for this segment, I'm still planning on casting on this whirlwind hat. Like I said earlier, I just didn't have the emotional energy to deal with counting. To cast on. So it's just kind of sitting in a bag waiting for me. And then I've been getting the urge to knit a baby sweater, which is odd. I don't know if it's more, watching other YouTube podcasters who have been making baby sweaters. There isn't really anybody I can give a baby sweater to. I just kind of want something small and easy and a practice of making sweaters. And then I'm sure I can find a baby to give it to or a kid to give it to. Just set it aside. Somebody I know someday will have a baby and I can give it to them. So that's kind of my plan. Don't know what sweater I'm going to make yet. Don't know, the plan there. I kind of am thinking maybe a cardigan so I can practice button bands because I've never done a button band before and it'd be nice to learn a new skill. So I'll probably be looking for something like that. And knowing me, I'll either use this cracked pepper colorway because I have so much of it, or I've got some Cascade 220 in purple that I also bought a sweater's quantity worth for myself and then didn't use. So it's also sitting around waiting to be used on other things. So it's a good test yarn to kind of figure out new skills. And that's all the stitching content I have this week. So let's move right along to the Geek segment. So today I want to talk about books, specifically cozy mysteries and romance novels. For those of you who don't know, a cozy mystery, according to Wikipedia, is a subgenre of crime fiction in which sex and violence occur off stage, the detective is an amateur sleuth, and the crime and detection takes place in a small, socially intimate community. I describe cozy mysteries to people as, those mysteries where it takes place in the same bed and breakfast or at dog shows or whatever, and it's, usually a lady solving some mysteries. There's pun names in the title, that kind of thing. My partner, who has worked at bookstores for their entire life pretty much, always brings up the author who gave co-authorship credit to their cat. They're not a fan of cozy mysteries like I am. But anyway, I'm a big fan of both genres, pretty much for the same reason, in that everything works out at the end. People like to make fun of and criticize these genres. Generally, the criticism I hear most is that it's formulaic. I could get into how a lot of this criticism is probably based in misogyny and a little bit of sexism, in that anything that is female dominated or has value for women tends to be devalued by society. For example, knitting is a great thing, or sewing. But I don't really want to get into gender politics today. I just kind of want to talk about books. So keep that in mind when you hear criticism about these kinds of genres. So I love these books. I read a lot as a kid and a younger person. This last year I haven't read a ton just because 2020 and 2021, you know what I mean? But the stuff I used to read primarily would be things like, epic fantasy, or it would be young adult novels, or it would be dystopian futures, or some combination. And turns out those were kind of a bummer. You would read these books and they were great, and all credit to authors, nobody was safe and people would die and all that kind of stuff. But I get too attached to fictional characters. It's an ongoing joke between my partner and I. There's a scene in The Simpsons where Lisa looks depressed and Marge asks her, and I quote, "What's the matter, sweetie? Is one of your book characters having difficulties?" And that really resonates with me and who I am as a person. There's a great mug on Redbubble, I think, that says I am too invested in emotional characters, and I keep meaning to get it. Or I am too emotionally invested in fictional characters. I keep meaning to get it, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but it's the truth. A great example of this is when I read the first book in the Outlander series. It was good, don't get me wrong, but stuff happens in there that's a real bummer. And if I think about it now and think about what happens in that book, I still get kind of bummed out. I find that traditional romance novels and cozy mysteries tend to work better now with where I am in my life. And by traditional romance novels, I tend to go more for modern romances, cowboys and that kind of, set in present day, as opposed to bodice rippers set in Regency England or whatever. No shame, just not my style. But yeah, and I go this way because I like it when two people get together in the end. I like it when a murder is solved. And I especially like it when these novels are set in the same town and with the same characters who keep coming back, because it's I get to check in with my friends. All of this to say, one of my favorite romance authors, her name is Pippa Grant, had a new book come out this month. She excels at writing standalone novels that are also intertwined with her other novels. So that kind of thing that I was talking about, it's I get to see this character from this novel and this character from this novel again, and they're in the background, and it's super fun, and I know who they are. They can get kind of racy. It is a romance novel, so keep that in mind if that's not your jam. I do like how modern and funny her characters are. Plus, there's a lot of stuff about boy bands in there, and that's always a positive for me. So I went to pick up the ebook, and it was on Kindle Unlimited. and which I haven't had for a while, but I've had in the past. And I was like, oh, I'll sign back up. That sounds like fun. And then I actually got 2 months for $4.99 for signing back up. And I was like, heck yeah. So I went through and I read the book, and it was great. After I finished it, this one was called I Pucking Love You. It's a hockey-based romance novel. The algorithm for Kindle recommended a new to me cozy mystery series by Regan Davis. The series is the Notorious Murder Mystery series, and it's Knit-orious, like Knit, Notorious Murder Mystery series, and the first book is called Knit 1 Murder 2. Ooh, new cozy mystery series set around knitting. Yes, please. So the first book centers around a woman named Megan. She'll be our main protagonist in the series here, who works part-time in a yarn shop called Knit-torious, that Knit, Notorious, in a small town of Harmony Lake, Ontario. I don't know if this is a real town. I didn't research it before this episode, but I love a fictional small town or a real small town. I think it's great. When she is suspected of murder, she works to clear her name. She also learns that her small, tight-knit community has more secrets than she realized. It's a super fun read. I really enjoyed it. I read it in about a day. I am a fast reader, though. There were good twists. The killer wasn't exactly who I expected. You know, there's definitely suspicion on different characters in the book, and it definitely left me satisfied. You know, it was a good, fun murder romp. So I definitely recommend it. If you like cozy mysteries, if you like having mysteries and novels set around a hobby you enjoy, it's a lot of fun. In fact, I enjoyed it so much I'm now on book 6 of I think there's 9 books in the series so far. And there's a couple other cozy mystery series too that focus around knitting and that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. For the knitting mystery series, the first book is called Knit 1 Kill 2, which is pretty similar to the name of Regan Davis's first book, which is that Knit 1 Murder 2, but they're very different. You know, it's just the knitting pun is right there. You got to do it, right? So there's Maggie Sefton's knitting mystery series. That is set around the main protagonist of Kelly Flynn, an accountant from Washington, D.C., who goes to a small town in Colorado where after her aunt is murdered, and she gets kind of wrapped up in the case when she starts to question if the narrative the police have come up with actually matches what really happened to her aunt. There's several books there, over 10 at this point, I think, and they're fun and good, and it's again that inner mixed community where you meet the same characters. You know, there's a cast of characters that you're used to, and you're excited to talk to them. You don't talk to them, but you're excited to see them and hear what they have to say. And then this other knitting series I tend to read that's mystery related is the Vampire Knitting Club. I am a little bit behind. The first book of that series is also called the Vampire Knitting Club. It is about a woman who comes to stay with her grandmother in England, only to find out her grandmother has passed away. Or has she? Read to find out. So, as I mentioned, the first book, actually all the books from what I can see for the Notorious Mystery Series, Murder Mystery Series, are on Kindle Unlimited, as is, I believe, all of the Vampire Knitting Club books. So, if you have Kindle Unlimited, if you're interested in that, you can pick those up for free and read them. Not sponsored, just a fan. And then you can also, the Maggie Sefton books are not on Kindle Unlimited, but they're reasonably priced. You can get them ebooks, you can get them paperback. Maybe you can check them out from your library. Highly recommend. They're great. That's probably my favorite series, honestly, is that Maggie Sefton series. And then there's also a romance novel series that is inspired by and centered around knitting and yarn. And that is Rachel Herron's Cypress Hollow yarn series. The first book there is How to Knit a Love Song, and it's super good, and I like it. It doesn't seem to be available in ebook format anymore, at least not on Kindle. So I did see it looks like it's available on iBooks, but I don't have any Mac products right now to check that. So, but you can get it in paperback and things like that, or again, potentially check it out from your library. But yeah, I'd love to hear if you guys have any reading recommendations for these kinds of genres, or if you're like me and kind of just need something that has a happy ending. Any other knitting series or crafty series that are focused around the hobbies, I would love to hear about in the comments below. Please let me know. And that's it for episode 5 of the Stitching Geek podcast. You can find links to patterns, yarn, books, everything I've talked about in the description below, and also at my blog at stitchinggeek.com. Anything that is an affiliate link or anything like that will be clearly marked. And I've tried to make sure to link to things that are Ravelry patterns and also non-Ravelry patterns for those who can't use Ravelry right now. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're so inclined, and I'll see you guys next time.